Yo guys, what's going on? Day 2 of the 30 Clubs in 30 Days recap for MLB Baseball Blogs and the Real Sports Talk. We are your hosts, Tim and Justin, along with me. You can hit me up on Twitter at CashKelly_TRST. And Justin, what's your Twitter?
I am OTHS Interviews, doing a lot of interviews with a lot of different sports leagues and players, so make sure to check me out at capital O, capital T, capital H, capital S at OTHS Interviews.
Alright, check him out. Day 2, the Minnesota Twins. And last season was not necessarily a success for the Twins. They will come back this year with the same manager as Ron Gardenhire. Justin, what was their record last year, and what did they do in the offseason? Who did they acquire, and who did they let go?
Alright, looking at last year, this team was just big question mark. I mean, they came in last in the AL Central. I thought the Royals would came in last year, but the Minnesota Twins performed terribly. Justin Morneau sat out for most of the year. Joe Mauer had injuries getting healthy. I mean, they got a young, talented team. Ben Revere came in. He made an appearance. You also got Alexi Casilla. He played great defense. I mean, this team has some great talent on there, but last year was just not the greatest year. They were 32 games out. And I think this year it could still be a big question for this Minnesota team. Now, when you look at their key accusations, or in my term, the key acquirements, they got some pretty low-end type of players. Ryan Doumit, I'm a fan of Ryan Doumit, but I don't think he's going to be a big difference maker at the catcher's position. Joe Mauer, I heard a lot of people are saying, well, Joe Mauer going to be catcher all year? Is he going to play a lot of first base? We don't know about that right now, but it looks like right now Joe Mauer is going to be the catcher. Ryan Doumit is going to serve as the backup, with Drew Beretta going to be backing him up. Going into the infield, Jamie Carroll coming over for the Dodgers. Nothing really excites me when Jamie Carroll plays. He's an average type of hitter, and let's just see what this guy can do. Going into the outfield, you got Josh Willingham. Now, Josh Willingham, this was a complete, out-of-the-air signing. This was right as soon as the offseason began. Josh Willingham, I think, was the first to sign out of free agency. And this guy does have power on him, and I didn't even think the Twins had interest in him until they all of a sudden signed him out of thin air. And I thought maybe the White Sox could have been a possibility, but the Twins land him to replace Michael Kadire, who's off playing for the Colorado Rockies. Some minor league sightings. You got J.R. Tolles, catcher, former with the Houston Astros. Nothing really popping there. You got P.J. Walters. Pitching, you got none other than everybody's favorite pitcher. You got Jason Marquis. He's coming in. He looks like he's going to try to contend for that number 5 spot. So other than that, it looks like that's... Oh, you also got Joel Zumaya. He's coming off Tommy John surgery and hopes to come back healthy. But other than that, Tim, that's who they got out of the key accusations.
Alright, and Ron Gardenhire, as I said, comes back. He has made a reputation as one of the better managers in the league. Let's really look at this Twins lineup now. We'll begin with the lineup. Joe Mauer at catcher, at least to begin the season. I know that they've considered putting him at first base and right field, both of which I think he has seen some moderate time in there. But it doesn't appear like he's going to begin the season at that spot. They did bring in Ryan Doumit, so who knows. Hopefully Joe Mauer stays healthy, because he really is a great catcher. And the problem with moving him to first base or right field is that Joe Mauer, one of the reasons he makes so much money, he's not a power hitter, but he's a solid contact hitter. But he is an incredible fielding catcher. And when they say, well, you got to save this guy as your $23 million investment, most of the reason that he is a $23 million investment is because of how good of a fielder that Joe Mauer is. I mean, everyone remembers that play against the Yankees the other year where Joe Mauer caught the ball 5 feet in front of home plate and then dove back and tugged. I think it was Jason Giambi. I'm not exactly sure who it was, but I'm pretty sure it's Giambi. And, I mean, that's one of the things that made Joe Mauer so successful. Now, over at first base, you have pretty similar questions with Justin Morneau, because throughout the last 2 seasons, Justin Morneau's really had trouble staying on the field. In 2010, he played 81 games. and in 2011 he played 69 games, no sexual pun intended. And then you have in 2009 he played 135 games, which really is not enough if this team's going to be successful. He put up nice numbers, 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, and in 2010 he was having a great year, 18 home runs, 56 RBIs, and hitting 345. But the concussions have really gotten to this guy and derailed his career, and you really have to wonder if he's ever going to be able to get it back on track. And if he's going to be able to do that, it's going to have to be this year.
Absolutely. This team has got, they got rid of one of their key players in the outfield, and other than Michael Kadzire. I thought this guy should have been a stay for this year, but obviously not. He is out playing for the Colorado Rockies. Now, when you look at the first baseman position, Justin Morneau has got to play a key role this year. If this Twins is going to look as trying to make a deep playoff push from worst to first this year, they really need all their guys healthy. That means Joe Mauer has to play a great year. Justin Morneau has to have a great year. You got to have Josh Willingham have a great year. I mean, 3 power hitters. Well, Joe Mauer's not big of a power hitter, but you've got to look at their 2 main power hitters in Willingham and Justin Morneau. I mean, Alexi Casilla, Jamie Carroll obviously is not a power hitter. Ben Revere is a speedy outfielder. David Valencia, he's in between a little bit. I mean, he doesn't have the greatest of power. Yeah. Denard Span, these are all average hitters, but you gotta find another big bat. So you really gotta look at Morneau and Willingham this year as
and
the
that's
power
I think
hitters.
one of the reasons that they brought in Ryan Doma. They sure as hell did not think, oh, if Morneau goes out, we can just move Mauer to first base and we got a Gold Glove catcher in Ryan Doma, because he's certainly not that. Ryan Doma is coming there for his power that he could potentially bring to this team. He hasn't been great over the past few years. Last year, though, in 77 games, he had 303 with 8 home runs. So if he gets enough at-bats, he's going to be able to be successful for this team and maybe actually be one of the better signings of the offseason. If Morneau goes down, do not expect Mauer to move to first and Doma to step in as catcher. Expect Mauer to stay behind the plate and to move Doma over to first base, where he is listed right now as the backup. Now we go over to second base, a guy who was a very, very hot rookie a few years ago, and he's kind of fizzled out since, is Alexi Casilla. Last year in 97 games, he batted .260 with 4 home runs. He's pretty solid in the field, but the hitting has really got to step up, and that's a problem with this team. They have guys like Ben Revere is a solid fielder. He probably had the best play of the MLB season last year, but this lineup is just not very strong.
Absolutely, man. You got to go at second base. I think it was Nishikawa. He lost his second base. I think. Was it true that Alexi Casilla went down last year a little bit?
I think he did. Yeah, and Nishikawa. He was a guy who they paid a lot of money to have him come over from Japan, I believe it was, and it was Japan. And what he did, I picked him to win Rookie of the Year, and the guy ended up playing 68 games, and he was out for the year. I think he broke his leg or something.
With Nick Swisher sliding into him.
Yeah, he batted .226 with 0 home runs and 19 RBIs, so he was a very, very disappointing first season. I was hoping he'd be good, and then I could learn how to say his first name. He's going to be a candidate to play second base and some shortstop, as he's listed as the backup for Jamie Carroll. Jamie Carroll's a veteran. He is, I believe, let me look, he's about 37 years old. He's a pretty decent fielder. Last year with the Dodgers, the last 2 seasons he spent with the Dodgers. In 146 games last year, he had .290, but he doesn't bring you much pop in the lineup. He batted hit 0 home runs and 17 RBIs. He did steal 10 bases, so he is somewhat of a threat once he gets on. He's a decent hitter, but the problem is in a lineup like this, you can't just have a guy that hits .290 but doesn't really bring much else to the table, because you don't have a ton of guys, especially if Morneau goes down, in this lineup that are just going to be able to say, okay, he's going to get on base and we're going to have so-and-so hit him in, because there's not a lot of guys in this lineup that are good enough to do that.
Absolutely. So Jamie Carroll, he's going to have to step up a little bit, playing a little bit defensive-wise. Nishikawa, I do not think he's going to bring it for another year. You got to wait and see what this guy can really bring up. I can possibly think about sending him in the minor leagues, but that's going to sound stupid because what backup will they have at shortstop for him. So I think Jamie Carroll's a pretty solid spot right now. That's the best they could do as of right now. But coming up in the future, this team has got to get maybe a solid number 4 hitter. I don't think Jamie Carroll. I think Jamie Carroll probably has two more years left on him until he starts thinking about retiring.
Yeah, I think he signed a 2-year deal too, so that works out perfectly. Danny Valencia will be the starting third baseman. After starting well in his rookie season in 2010 in 85 games, he had .311 with 7 home runs. Last year in 154 games, he had 15 home runs and 72 RBIs, but a .246 average is not cutting it in the major leagues, especially from your third baseman. To be honest, I'm not sure what type of fielder Danny Valencia is, but he's going to have to really step it up at the plate this season. And then as his backup, they have Luke Hughes, who I believe, last season in 96 games, Luke Hughes had 7 home runs and 30 RBIs and batted .223. So basically you're looking at probably a platoon situation if nothing improves from last year. So you don't really have a steady third baseman right there. I think Danny Valencia can be a very good player, but he has not proven it so far. Out in the outfield now, you have Ben Revere starting in left field, made one of the best catches of the season last year, but he had .267 with 0 home runs and 30 RBIs. He did have 34 stolen bases, so once you get him to the plate, or once you get him on base, he can be a threat on the base paths. But he was also caught stealing 9 times, which kind of puts a little, I can't even think of the word, on what he did stealing bases.
Yeah, Ben Revere, this guy is like, he has the speed of, I want to say maybe Carl Crawford. I mean, this guy, very young, very talented. He brings it to the plate, and yes, he did not hit home runs he did not hit 1 home run last year, but this guy does not bring the power, but I still think that this guy could possibly hit maybe, I'd be really surprised if he can hit at least 5 home runs this year. I mean, if that. I think if he's stealing the bases this year, I can predict him hitting at least maybe 37, maybe 40. He really showed it. 34 stolen bases is great. So I have a standard for him this year. I'd say maybe 40 stolen bases this year. He plays a lot of games, so he's a really solid outfielder. But for all you fantasy owners, if you're looking for a speedy type of guy, you gotta look at Ben Revere here.
And then as the backups, you have Trevor Plouffe, who will most likely be playing a lot of DH this season, especially if Justin Morneau goes down. And then you also have, or moves to DH, because that might take away some of the risk of him getting injured. But you also have Rene Tosini over there, and what does he really do for you? He had .203 last year with 5 home runs. I mean, the Twins bench is not exactly what you would call deep this season, and that's why the lineup isn't necessarily real good, especially if you don't have Morneau and Mauer. So a lot's going to depend on what they do. In center field, you have Denard Span, one of the more underrated players in the MLB. Last year, he had .264 with 2 home runs and 16 RBIs. He's very solid in the field, and he stole 6 bases. The Twins also locked him up to an extension last year. He's 27 years old, and I think that he actually does have a lot of potential. He's had some better seasons in the past, obviously. In 2009 was probably his best season.
Yeah, man. I mean, looking at this, Denard Span, again, last year, went down with injury, only appearing in 70 games last year. And I think with the re-signing of him, yes, I do agree to what they did. They're trying to lock up possibly one of their top future players in the organization, but you got to keep this guy healthy. You got to start using him at the correct times. Like, if he's on base, you got to get that power. You got to bring these guys home. You got to get some run support also to these pitchers. I think when Denard Span is on the base path, this guy is very dangerous. So he has to be very healthy in order to get and help get the run support in.
Alright, in right field, you have probably their biggest offseason acquisition, which is Josh Willingham, a guy who spent a lot of his career with the Marlins and Nationals, and then last year with the A's. Willingham, he's not a great average hitter, but he will strike out a decent amount, especially last year when he struck out 150 times. But what he's going to do is he's going to probably give you a solid 25 home runs, which is very important. He's a solid MLB hitter. He'll give you 25 home runs in most years and 60 or 70 or not 60 or 70. He can give you close to 100 RBIs in a good year. He's hit over 30 home runs, I believe, once in his career. and he had 29 last season. So Josh Willingham is a nice pickup, but the problem is Michael Cuddyer is probably a better player.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Willingham, he does give you the power in that outfield. But Michael Cuddyer, I have to go with Michael Cuddyer. He hits for average. He hits for power. I mean, he's an all-around baseball player. But with the Twins right now, their outfield is pretty stacked a little bit. You got Willingham, Spahn. You also got Ben Revere. The guy you really got to pay attention to, also in that outfield, you have to put a lot more spotlight on Denard Span. So, going back to Josh Willingham, he does give you a lot of great power to the team.
Alright, now that is their lineup. Let's transition over to their starting rotation led by the veteran Carl Pavano. Obviously, most people know him from the years of the Yankees. He gave them a lot of innings last year with 222, but a disappointing second season. After the first year there, he had an ERA of 3.75, which isn't great, but it's a solid starter. The problem with the Twins is they don't have anyone better, so he's forced to be their ace. And last year he was 9-13 with a 4.30 ERA. The last few seasons he's given his team a lot of innings after barely even pitching when he was with the Yankees. He's going to have to be able to stay healthy, and if he can stay healthy, he's got to keep that ERA down below like 3.80 or so, and that's probably about the best you're going to get out of Carl Pavano at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he has to step up a whole lot this year if this team's going to make a great push to the playoffs. I mean, if you look back to his prior season in 2010, even with the 11 losses, he did perform pretty well. He's 17-11, over a 500 record, but he really has to bring that ERA down. I mean, you do not have this. The first two spots in rotation is Pavano and Francisco Liriano. Scott Baker, Nick Blackburn, those guys are two questionable type of pitchers. You also got Brian Dunsing. So looking at this, I think the guys you really have to depend on in this team right now, in the pitching rotation side of things, has got to be Pavano and also Liriano.
Yeah, and we get to Liriano now, a guy who was really disappointed. His first season in 2006, his first real season, he was 12-3, 2.16 ERA. At that time, they still had Johan Santana, and the future looked real bright. He had an injury in 2007. I think he had Tommy John surgery. He came back in 2008 at a 3.91 ERA. 2009 he had a 5.80 ERA, and then last year, or 2 years ago in 2010, he had a 3.62 ERA. Went 14-10, gave him 191 innings. Things looked like they were really getting back on track for him, and then he struggled again last year with a 9-10 record and a 5.09 ERA. And if this guy is really going to turn out to be a elite MLB pitcher, it's going to have to be this year for the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, there's also a big question where I think the trade talks for Liriano is going to pop back up in near the trade deadline. But Tim, let me ask you a question: do you think Liriano will be out at the trade deadline?
Not if he's having a season like he did last year. The Twins are still going to value him high, and the problem is that he's not pitching well enough to be valued high. So we'll have to see. I don't think that the Twins will get enough in return to part with this guy.
Yeah, so I think Francisco Liriano, if he is to get traded out of Minnesota, he does provide. Say like the Yankees, maybe the Yankees who are right now trading away A.J. Burnett. If the Yankees could somehow get into trade talks with Francisco Liriano again, I think he's going to be a solid number 3 pitcher. So
I think the team to really watch would be either the Rangers or the Tigers, because both of those teams need probably a better number 2 than what they have right now, or at least more rotation depth.
Texas doesn't have Colby Lewis anymore. I mean, Colby Lewis, he did have that beast year in the playoffs, but right now the pitching rotation that the Texas Rangers have does not compare up at all to the LA Angels one.
Alright, number 3, you got Scott Baker. Scott Baker last season and the last few seasons has done a decent job. But last year he had a career year. 2008 was a very good season too, when he had a 11-4 and 3.45 ERA. But last year, 8-6, 3.14 ERA, 134 innings. He had a nice year for them last year. You would like to see him throw some more innings this year, but he is a really solid number 3 for the Twins.
He's all right in my book. He still has a lot to improve in my mind. 8-6. I do expect this guy to be at least maybe a 9 or 10 win type of player this year. He really needs to get they really got to extend him in innings. I mean, if he's really that bad, you got to start thinking about, will he be on this team later on? I mean, as of right now, he still has a lot to improve right now. So you can expect him to perform a little bit better this year and possibly get more innings in.
Yeah, and I mean, he's even the type of person you can see get traded because that type of starter is valuable, especially if he got moved to the National League. At number 4, you have Nick Blackburn, who's really going to have to step it up this season. Last year, 7-10 with a 4.49 ERA, and really throughout his career, he hasn't done a whole lot better. His best season was probably in 2008 when he went 11-11 with a 4.05 ERA. He'll give you some decent innings, probably about 150 or 160 innings, but ultimately the ERA is going to have to come down this season. And then at number 5, you have Brian, is it Dunsing or Densing? I can never remember it.
I think it was Dunsing.
Alright, Brian Dunsing, 9-14 with a 5.23 ERA. I don't think a whole lot more needs to be said. A 5.23 ERA pretty much speaks for itself, and it's not getting the job done for this team the way that they need it to be done.
Yeah, this pitching rotation, there is a possible number 6 starter in the rotation, and Jason Marquis, who spent, I think, time last year. I think it was with the Nationals and the D-backs, and even with both of those, teams, he did not perform well at all. So he's trying to come in here and try to compete with, I think, Blackburn and Dunsing for a possible number 4 and number 5 role. But I think right now, I think Nick Blackburn will possibly be that solid number 4 starter for the Minnesota Twins, but it's going to have to be a battle for number 5 between Dunsing and Marquis. But if I had to prefer either Dunsing or Marquis, I'm going to have to stick with Dunsing right now. Marquis has not proved himself over the last couple of years to be that number 5 or maybe number 4 pitcher. So I'm going to stick with Dunsing in this one, and we'll see what this team can do and how well they can do pitching-wise.
The thing about Jason Marquis is once every 3 or so years, he tends to be an all-star. So who knows? It's a nice below-the-radar pickup for the Minnesota Twins this season. Let's go to the bullpen now. We'll start with the man anchoring the bullpen, Matt Capps, after Joe Nathan is gone, basically lost his job via Tommy John surgery. Came back last year, was not successful, but neither was Matt Capps, who went 4-7 with a 4.25 ERA, had 15 saves, but he blew 9 saves. That's not getting the job done, and he's going to have to step it up after having a few really nice years, especially in 2010. After he got traded away from the Pirates, where he was not having a nice first half, he ended up with 42 saves, a 2.47 ERA. He did a nice job down the stretch for the Twins. And when he was with the Pirates the first few seasons, he had a 3.02 ERA, a 2.28, 3.79. You know, the guy can give you 20 to 30, or 25, 30 saves. He's a pretty solid closer, but they're going to need him to be better this year.
I feel that Matt Capps is going to have a good year this year. I mean, they were just switching their closers around from Nathan to Matt Capps, Nathan to Matt Capps, and I think that's what I think that kind of affected him in his play a little bit. So I think with him coming back as a main closer, I think that Matt Capps is going to have a pretty solid year. I think he can I think he's gonna blow at least maybe 3 or 4 saves this year. I mean, nothing too serious about that though. But I think he's gonna win at least maybe 6 or 7, with possibly about 4 to 3 losses.
Yeah, and I mean, blowing 3 or 4 saves, you can live with that out of your closer. As one of the setup man, or I'm not even sure the exact deal, I think he's one of the setup mans, myself and Justin's favorite pitcher in the MLB, Glenn. I like to eat breakfast at Perkins. 4-4 last year with a 2.48 ERA. He has some experience as a starter, and if things really go badly for Matt Capps this season, there's a possibility that he could get some looks as a closer this year, maybe.
If Glenn, I like to eat breakfast at Perkins. I think he's going to be a startup guy, I'm pretty sure, as of right now. But when Joel Zumaya comes back, I don't think he's going to the season. But when Joel Zumaya returns, I think he had elbow surgery or Tommy John surgery, one or the other. I don't know the full extent of his injury. I only know it was his arm that got injured last year with the Tigers. I think when Zumaya comes back, you gotta see what this guy can do. I think Glenn Perkins is a late inning reliever, but I don't really see him as that setup guy. So if you're the Twins, I would suggest that once Zumaya comes back and he says he's healthy, put him in the setup role, see what he's got, and nothing really works out there, you could probably move him down to maybe a late reliever type of guy, because when you look at this bullpen, they don't have a lot of players that really stands out. Alex Burnett, you got Swarzak, I think that's how you pronounce him. You got Diamond. Yeah, these guys are middle reliever type of guys, but I think Joel Zumaya is going to have to come back really healthy this year. He really has got to bring it to this bullpen.
Yeah, and when he's healthy, he's spent his whole career with the Tigers. He can throw really hard, and he's very effective. He's just had trouble the last 2 or 3 seasons really staying healthy, and it's a shame when you see guys like that are really talented when they're young, and then injuries just kill them. I mean, guys like Grady Sizemore, that comes to mind. Just to run down, just to name Swarzak, Scott Diamond also is in the bullpen. You got Lester Oliveros and Kyle Waldrop, so that will pretty much sum up the Minnesota Twins bullpen. Justin, who is your X factor for the Twins this season?
I think we come to the X factor player-wise. I mean, it could go to maybe 2 to 3 players in my mind, but if you're going to look at it, it has to be Joe Mauer. Joe Mauer has got to step up, and I do expect Joe Mauer to possibly this spring to work on his power. I think this is a guy who can hit for power, but he's more of I think last year how many home runs, Tim? Was it 7?
Yeah, not enough.
It was just not enough for this team to at least. This team was just terrible. No, they had 3 home runs last year from Mauer. This guy has got to work on his power. I mean, this guy looks like he is a power hitter, but Joe Mauer has got to bring the power this year to the Minnesota Twins team and try to go from worst to possibly second place, because I know the Detroit Tigers are going to take this division.
Record-wise, well, let me get to that in a second. Obviously, I think Morneau and Mauer are the 2 biggest ones. They have got to stay healthy. And I think Ryan Doumit could play a key role for this team this season, too, especially if one of them is not able to stay healthy. And heaven forbid for Twins fans, both of them aren't able to stay healthy. And at that point, their season goes down the tubes probably anyway. Record-wise, where do you see the Twins this season?
You know what? It's a big question due to the health right now. If Morneau's going to be ready for opening day and this team can perform really well, I'm going to have to say 4th place. I think they're going to improve a little bit in some areas, but I really have 4th place as this team right now with this team.
I see them, if they can stay healthy, competing with the Indians for 2nd place. I think when they're always healthy, or when they're all together and they're healthy and Mauer's playing well and Morneau's playing well, and it's been a few years since that's happened, that this can be a team that could make a run towards the playoffs. But the problem is the Tigers have really done an incredible job revamping that team, and they look very strong this year. I see the Twins right now, because I'm just not sure what Justin Morneau can do, or Joe Mauer, in terms of staying healthy. I don't like the pitching staff, and I'm really not a huge fan of the lineup. I mean, the bullpen's pretty solid, but I see them at about 81 wins, and I think that it could certainly go up and it could certainly go down, as we saw last year with the injuries, and as we saw 2 years ago, I believe, when they won this division. So there's a lot of questions for the Minnesota Twins coming into this season. Leave us your thoughts and continue to check out the 30 Clubs in 30 Days recap on MLB Baseball blogs and the Real Sports Talk. I'm Tim, he's Justin, #Deuce.